An alternative way of highlighting your miniatures is to use layer paints, which have been designed for this purpose because they're actually slightly transparent, so you can use them to build up your colour over multiple layers until you're happy with it. Now they do require a bit of practice to use, but the results are absolutely worth it. Something worth knowing is that these paints have been designed as a 1-2 step highlight, so 2 paints for each colour, and all the information for this is available on the website, but this is a guideline rather than a rule. I am, however, going to show you this system in action now using this ogre bull, so let's get to it. Okay, so I've got my 2 paints ready for the 2 steps, and it's Cadian Flesh Tone and Kislev Flesh. Now Cadian Flesh Tone's the darker of the 2, so that's the one I'm going to start with. So as always, give the paint a good shake, and well, here's the colour, there we go, and grab your brush. The one I'm going to use first of all is a base coat brush because it's a good size for the area I'm going to paint. But I've got a detailed brush on hand as well for doing the finer areas, as you'll see in a moment. But just gather a bit of paint and pop it onto your palette and use a bit of water just to thin it down just a little bit. You don't need very much water. So that should be fine like that. Now having the palette's very important for this because you need to control how much paint you've got on your brush. Also, one of the secrets of using layer paints is that the most important thing you need on your brush is a fine tip. So to get that, what you can do, what I like to do, is just drag my brush along the palette like that and twist it as I go, because then I get a nice fine tip on the brush. And this means I'll be able to control it easily. So it's just a simple case of looking on your miniature and looking for any creases and raised surfaces, and use the layer paint to pick out these raised surfaces like this. So I've got this muscle here, then there's this crease. I'm going to ignore that and just go to the other side of it and paint the other side like that. Just thin my paint down a bit more. And all you've got to do is work around the miniature, picking them out like this. Now the paint is still a bit transparent, as I said earlier, so that's fine. This is just the first time that we're using this particular colour for the layer. So I'm going to come back to this later and add another. So larger area muscles, this brush is perfect, but for things like his face, that's what my detail brush is for. Same principle for this, just look for any raised details, like say his nose here, and just use the colour to pick it out. Okay, so I finished painting this first layer on, but well, remember earlier I said this paint's a little bit transparent. There are some areas here where you can still see the darker colour showing through, like around here. But that's okay, that's what these paints are for. All I'm going to do is apply a second layer now, as before, thinning the paint down a little bit. And now I can use this paint to really start building up that definition and shape of the muscle. There we go, see how much brighter the colour is now? So use this to go over any of those parts that are transparent and just really pick out the shape of the area you're painting. Like all these creases in his back, all this flab here. Right, so now that I've finished putting a second layer of Cadian Flesh Tone on, well, you can see what a difference it's made. The model's ready for the battlefield already. The highlight's nice and smooth now, but I want to show you what happens if we put another layer on, this time using the next stage paint. So the one I'm going to use now is Kislev Flesh. So here we go. Now the preparation is exactly the same as what we did before. Give the paint a good shake first of all, and grab your brush. I'm going straight to a detail brush this time because this technique's quite fine. Load your brush up, pop it on the palette, and add just a little bit of water just to thin it down. There we go, and twist the brush to get a nice fine tip, and we're ready to go. So what you need to do is look on your miniature and look for areas of detail that you want to really make pop out where light would catch. So on his face, for example, a great area would be, say, his eyebrows along here, and on his nose. And you can see immediately that just doing these little bits of paint just makes that detail just jump out at you. Now if you watch what I'm doing here, I'd like to, well, to get used to what I'm about to do, I tend to do a few practice strokes before I actually touch the brush to the miniature. just so I get in my mind what kind of movement I need to make to get that fine line there. So what I'm going to do now is just work my way around the miniature, just picking out areas like this. And you'll see, once I've finished, just what a difference it's going to make. Right, there we go. Now that I've finished applying that second layer to the miniature, well, you can see it's really brought out all the detail and definition of him. It's really brought this ogre to life. So just to recap, when you're using the layer paints, remember that these are designed to be used as a 1-2 step highlight on your miniatures, but this is a guideline rather than a rule. Make sure you pick an appropriate size brush to whatever it is you're painting, and absolutely use a palette so that you can control how thin the paint is and how much you have on your brush. Now, doing this does require a bit of practice to get used to it, but you can see the results are absolutely worth it. So always remember that practice makes perfect.